Hello everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of Pulp Crazy. I'm your host, Jason Aiken. In this week's episode, I'm going to be discussing a story that's not pulp, and it's not written by a pulp author, but the author is clearly a fan of H.P. Lovecraft, Clark Ashton Smith, Robert E. Howard, and Fritz Leiber, as he recommended them to his readers on a blog post a few years back. He's even put in references to Lovecraft's and Howard's work into his own, but Lovecraft especially. The story that I'm discussing this week is In the Lost Lands, a dark fantasy short story written by George R.R. Martin. It was first published in Amazon's 2, edited by Jessica Amanda Salmonson, and published by Daw Books in June 1982. At the time of this episode's recording, George R.R. Martin is most likely the most well-known author on the planet. His epic fantasy novels, comprising A Song of Ice and Fire, serve as an inspiration for the hit HBO television show, A Game of Thrones. In the Lost Lands predates A Game of Thrones, the first book in the Song of Ice and Fire series, by 16 years. But elements of his future fantasy epic can be found within this enjoyable fantasy short story. The opening lines of In the Lost Lands read as, "You can buy anything you might desire from Gray Alys, but it is better not to." Gray Alys is the main character of the story. As the opening line states, she's able to get anything for anyone, as long as they pay her for it. Gray Alys is unable to refuse anyone's request. At the beginning of the story, Gray Alys is hired by the Lady Melange, the local ruler of a high mountainside keep overlooking the town where she resides. Lady Melange doesn't come herself, however. She makes her request through the captain of her color guard and her champion, Blue Alys. A few things I should mention about Gray Alys. We're told that she's a slender woman of an indeterminate age and always wears gray clothing. Apparently, she doesn't always appear this way. Sometimes she's a man, sometimes she's an old woman, and other times she's a child. You see, Gray Alys is a shapeshifter. However, she's not a slave to the moon like werewolves are. She can change forms at will. Sometimes she takes the form of a great cat, a bird, or a bear. This is important because what Lady Melange wishes to buy from Gray Alys is the ability to shapeshift. Blue Alys drops several colorful gems as payment, and Gray Alys agrees to the request. But Blue Alys also has another job for Gray Alys, one that he wishes to purchase himself. Alys pays Gray Alys and states he wishes for her to fail in her attempt to fulfill the Lady Melange's wishes. Gray Alys accepts his request as well. After Alys leaves, Gray Alys spreads the word through unusual means across the land of what she seeks. Gray Alys is seeking a werewolf. One day, a young woodsman, a hunter named Boyce, visits Gray Alys. He tells her he knows where she can find a werewolf in the Lost Lands to the north, and that he'll take her to him. Gray Alys agrees. You can probably tell by that little teaser that some elements from Martin's A Song of Ice and Fire series are present in this story. The first thing that jumped out at me is the color guard. One of the would-be kings in A Song of Ice and Fire also has a multicolored king's guard, as does Lady Melange in this story. Another element is the concept of a werewolf. While A Song of Ice and Fire doesn't have werewolves per se, they do have wargs. The werewolf in this story is about what you would expect when you hear the term. A man or a person that can shapeshift into a wolf. But in A Song of Ice and Fire, men and women that are wargs and skin changers, they don't actually physically turn into a wolf or another animal. Instead, they kind of project their minds into a beast and take control of the animal's body that way. I should also mention the style and tone of In the Lost Lands. This is definitely a dark fantasy story with adult elements. There's sex in this story, and a healthy dose of violence. It's not overly graphic, though. Like in A Song of Ice and Fire, I feel that these elements make the characters, although fantastic, more realistic in my eyes as well. Like I said, I read this in Amazon's 2, which I picked up in paperback at a used bookstore. But In the Lost Lands appears in several anthologies. Just eyeballing the ISFDB bibliography, Dream Songs Volume 1 from Bantam Books is the most recent mass-market collection to have it included. I think that should be pretty easy to find. I think I see that on bookstore shelves still. In the Lost Lands was most recently printed in a charity anthology from Nightscape Press as well, called Fantasy for Good, a charitable anthology. So there's that option for you as well. I'll put the ISFDB bibliography link in the show notes, so you can see all of the anthologies In the Lost Lands is available in. I won't go into any more story elements, because I think this is definitely a story that's worth reading, and I don't want to spoil it for you. If you're a fan of A Song of Ice and Fire and Game of Thrones, definitely take the time to read one of its precursors. I also heard that In the Lost Lands is going to be made into a film. It looks like Mila Jovovich is in talks to star in it. From everything I'm reading, it appears like they're going to use In the Lost Lands and 2 other short stories with female heroines, written by Martin, as the source material. If Jovovich is playing Gray Alys, maybe they're going to hint that Gray Alys and the stars of the other 2 stories are all really the same person, but just under different names and in different settings. Or maybe In the Lost Lands will be an anthology motion picture. Either way, I'll definitely go to see it once it hits the theaters. Well, that's it for this week's episode. Pulp Crazy is located at pulpcrazy.com. I'm at Pulp Crazy on Twitter and facebook.com/pulpcrazy. My YouTube channel is located at youtube.com/pulpcast. You can also email me at pulpcrazy@gmail.com. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.